12 English coordinator.
And the reason that we have sticky notes on the table was to give you a chance, if you wanted to write any pressing questions that you had about Common Core or PARCC, to make sure that we addressed the reason that you came here. But since there's just a couple of people, if there's anything in particular that you really wanted out of this session, feel free to speak up and ask a question at any time. Okay?
So we're just going to start off by talking a little bit about standards, and I wanted to make the distinction between standards, curriculum, instruction, and assessment. I think sometimes the message can be confusing. So standards are really developed at the state level in Massachusetts, and we hear a lot about the Common Core. Well, in Massachusetts, we've actually maintained, or retained, you could say, 80% of our Massachusetts standards, and we have about 20% that's now the Common Core. So those are the state standards. When we come to Wakefield, that's when we start talking about district-wide curriculum. And the curriculum is developed with district coordinators, the assistant superintendent, and other parties. Then we will talk about instruction, and instruction, of course, happens in the classroom level. And finally, assessment. And assessment, you've heard about MCAS and PARCC. So assessment really happens at the state level, also at the classroom level, and at the district level. On the screen, you can see these are the Massachusetts English Language Arts and Literacy Standards. And these are really important. These standards ask the students to read complex grade level texts and develop wide vocabulary. So they actually, the vocabulary acquisition, and then they have to use vocabulary. They actually also speak and write in many different ways. For instance, arguments, explanations, narratives. And then they are asked to support their ideas with evidence from authoritative sources.
Can we just ask questions?
Sure, please, feel free.
So that was one of the things so that's called a core. That's like, I know since my son and daughter have been in the Greenwood Elementary, I've been kind of impressed that they've come back with this essay structure that I don't recall even doing until junior high school. So that's a core standard now in elementary and middle school.
The nice thing about the standards, we're going to talk about that in a couple of slides, is that with the Common Core, we now really have a foundational writing system in place. So each grade level, and like I said, we'll talk about this, builds from the previous grade level. And they get writing instruction from K to 12 that just keeps building and building and building until, and the end result is a college and career ready student who really knows how to communicate effectively. That's what it's all about.
Now, is that something that's changed since, like, somebody my age went to elementary school? It seems like they're doing it much earlier.
I would say absolutely. Absolutely. So this year, what I'm seeing for the quality and product of writing in our elementary schools is really increasing based on the standards and the rigor of the standards, what students are being asked to do, but they can do it. And with the guidance and solid instruction, they really can do it.
I think in the past it was more at the teacher level. The teacher would, maybe there would be a textbook and the teacher would create the curriculum, whereas now with the standards in place, the standards are really just like the buckets, the teachers get to fill them. So that's how I like to look at it. And the curriculum is what we've created, in Wakefield. We've really worked hard to create a curriculum that is just builds those foundational skills at each level. And it really is vertically aligned so that anyone in the district, if they were to move or something, from K all the way up to 12, they're doing roughly the same things. The standards are what are being covered. How they're being covered, is still up to the teacher. So, into the underlying philosophy of the standards is that we are really in this together. So this is a community approach to literacy. The standards that are up here are broad or overarching standards. Hi, come in.
Hi, come on in, join us.
And so these are the overarching standards, and they are reading, literacy, and informational text. That's a slight change from before. Foundational skills in reading, writing, speaking and listening, And then we have a language standard, which incorporates vocabulary and conventions of standard English. And new to the standards is the literacy in history, social studies, science, and the technical subjects. That's important because now, outside of the English language arts classroom, other disciplines have adopted the same standards that we cover. So consistency across multiple subjects.
Including the writing standard. You're talking about writing. I was in a science classroom yesterday, and they're using the same writing standards in the science classroom. So it really cuts across all subject areas.
Yeah.
So the students are actually like developing, writing an essay or writing a report
Yes.
based on a science topic.
Yes.
And the same way. So they're learning the same approach to writing in English as they are in history and in science.
Right. How do I articulate my thesis statement or my opinion, and then back it up with evidence and cite evidence? Cuts across all subject areas.
Yeah, my second grader came home and explained it to me.
Oh, do you love it? That's good.
I was like, wow, that's pretty
Good.
It is pretty good.
So all of the things we're talking about come back to these anchor standards, and we have a handout for you. And the anchor standards, like I said previously, are really the overarching standards. And then on the individual classroom level, that's where we have more specific standards that we cover. So let's just take a look at this sheet for a moment, and Dr. Smith can
Just a quick walkthrough. So that there are anchor standards that are K through 12 in reading, in writing, and speaking and listening. This is just an example to give you a kind of a snapshot of what it looks like. These are the anchor standards for reading. So this are the overarching standards for, as I said, K through 12. And it's broken down into four big ideas. We kind of refer to number 1 and 10. I like to think of those as the bookends or the power standards. We're really teaching our students to read closely and understand what a text explicitly says, be able to cite specific contextual evidence from the text, to make sure they understand that they can really pull out ideas and themes, analyze the development, support their ideas, really how characters and events and ideas interact and develop over the course of a text. The second big bucket is under craft and structure. You'll see in an upcoming activity that we'll do that, being able to interpret words and meaning as they are used within a text. The structure of the text itself, how specific words, sentences, paragraphs come together as a whole, and also how a point of view or purpose really shapes a text. And the students are really learning all of these things from the earliest grade levels all the way through. The integration of knowledge and ideas, one of the things in the new standards is how we bring in diverse media and formats. We're looking at things visually as well as in words, evaluating arguments and specific claims in a text, including the validity of reasoning and the evidence itself. Students now are reading and analyzing 2 or more texts at one time. You'll see a lot of that now, so that they really can understand, to address similar themes and build knowledge and compare approaches that a different author might take. And then finally, like I said, 10 is that other bookend standard, a really important anchor standard about the range of reading and level of text complexity. So one of the things that's happened in the Common Core standards and our Massachusetts state standards is that we're really looking at not only just literature, which I'm a huge lover of literature myself. Literature's not going away. We're embracing literature as we always have, but making sure we also have a balance of informational texts as well, and that students can read independently and efficiently at grade level. And it's really kind of a lift, the standards, in terms of really making sure students are always reading complex texts that are challenging them, whatever they might be in that spectrum. So this just gives you an idea of what those anchor standards look like, and then at every grade level, you'll see as we go on in the next slide, then we break them down into what should students know and be able to do at each grade level on that pathway to grade 12.
Do you have a list for of the textbooks and the essays, just as a parent? I think this is really fascinating. Like number 9, analyze 2 or more texts of a similar theme. I've seen some of the assignments my son and daughter come home with. Do you just have when you go to college, they hand you a syllabus and they say, okay, we're going to be reading these 40 books
Right.
this semester. Do you have that?
So I think the way to do that would be at the classroom or grade level. I think if you went to your grade 2 teacher and asked for that information, you would be able to get that information. And at the higher grade levels, you know, someone like Paul, who's a curriculum coordinator, could help, you know, give you that information.
I think we're working on creating a framework, but you know, the individual assignments, like him said, you still need to see the teacher.
Classroom.
Yep, classroom teacher.
Well, we talked a lot about building, so what does it look like to build upon the previous year of instruction? This is a chart that gives you an idea of one kind of writing assignment. So this would be research writing, and what does it look like at different levels. So in the 3rd grade, a student would conduct a short research project that builds knowledge about a topic. And when we move all the way to the 5th grade, they're still conducting short research projects. This time, they're using several sources, and they're maybe building knowledge about several different aspects of the topic. When you get to 7th grade, they're conducting short research projects, answering questions, drawing on several sources, generating additional related questions, and they're doing further investigation. By the time they reach the high school level, grade 9 to 10, I would say all the way up to 12, they're conducting short, and this time we add on also sustained and longer term research projects, answering questions, creating self-guided questions, they're solving problems, they're assessing multiple sources, synthesizing those sources, bringing it together using you know, knowledge of their subject, and one thing that's not on there, they are presenting using those speaking and listening skills.
I think that just reminds me of you're asking that question about writing and what students are doing with writing, but there's an example, and I know Ms. Cook, we've talked about this in the past, about preparing students for writing at the college level, and if you look at how those standards really build upon those skills, it's like a spiraling curriculum, and we just keep adding to it all the way through the levels, so by the time they get to the end, they're career and college ready. And you know, the way the standards are constructed, they were done in sort of a backward design model where they started with, okay, when the student graduates from high school and we're handing them their diploma, they're going to be how, you know, what is our vision of what a literate person looks like going into the 21st century college experience or workplace, and then the standards were built with that in mind, and then backward designed them through grades all the way down through kindergarten. So some of the things when we think about, and when a person has that real level of readiness, a literate person in the 21st century is someone who has independence in reading and writing, but also works collaboratively well. Someone who can, you know, comprehend as well as critique, understands the value of evidence, someone that can use technology and digital media to gather information, but not just get information, but information that's reliable, and use it well. Someone who's able to understand the perspectives of others and have a broad idea of cultures, and are really ready for the college workplace or workplace.
Yeah.
You know, I am a fan, having kids gone through the system, I think it's great. My question, and again, I don't know who has like kindergartners or who has 7th, 8th, 9th graders. What are we, you know, when you get in on anything on the ground level, it's great because you're going to build on it. Mm-hmm. What about the student that's in the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade? They're not going to get the impact. You know, how are we going to start in the middle of the road? I mean,
we actually talked a lot about that, both in English language arts and math, because even right now we're adopting new math curriculum, and that is probably one of the biggest challenges, is you have students cutting in at grade 6 or grade 9 or even grade 11, and they didn't necessarily start in that curriculum sequence from the beginning. But it can be done. We just we have a high level of expectation, and with a lot of support and strong assessment, you can start students at any place. Of course, the ideal and ultimate is that they start at the beginning and work their way through.
So that it wouldn't be too challenging for them. You know, are the expectations going to be higher
the expectations are higher.
Well, I know
And
they
so
are,
it-
but it's
it-
going to be
right. So
higher
it
because
can
they're
be-
not on the ground floor
Right,
stuff.
so it can be a little bit overwhelming, and I think our students feel that a little bit when they come in. Again, this year we started some new math curriculum, and at the beginning, a little bit of that kind of feeling of overwhelmedness, like, was there for students because they thought, oh gosh, we've never really done this before. But with really good instruction, the students get it and they really come to it. So in answer to your question, I think that it absolutely works best if we're able to scaffold it from the beginning all the way through. But that's not to say that you don't just start, and you need to just start. So.
Right. So, what are the experiences that your children are going to be having in school, in their classes? I'm going to read some of the bullets, and then Kim is going to go a little more in depth. When we're talking about kindergarten, students would be participating in collaborative conversations with diverse partners during daily routines, and play and continue a conversation through multiple exchanges.
So this is one of the things we've already seen coming to life at our schools. It's been so wonderful, teaching children at the very youngest grades how to have a conversation. And that means to listen and make a connection to what was said and then commenting on that. So our students are practicing right now. This example is, probably you all know that story, The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Do you know that one? The little ones. So the students, maybe the teacher reads that book, and it's a shared read aloud. The student reads the book, and then the students practice working with a partner, first just answering a yes or no question, and then you begin to coach them into progressing into 2 or 3 exchanges about that book. So the students are just getting the idea of what we call at that grade level accountable talk, where students are able to build on one another's ideas. But it's been very exciting to watch. I was in I think it was a first or second grade classroom the other day, and a student said, although that's an important opinion, I disagree, and was able to say their own opinion. And it was really wonderful, because you think as those students are building those verbal skills, their ability when they get into the older grades to really articulate themselves it'll be profound.
Moving to grade 2, students now start writing opinion pieces that introduce topics or books. They state their opinions, they supply the reasons behind their opinions, they use linking words, they are able to connect their opinions and reasons and provide a concluding statement about what they're talking about.
So even an example, even as early as grade 2, students might do something like they'll engage in an activity where they try several different computer games and simulations that are connected to different subject areas like math or geography or music or science or art. And then they'll write an opinion piece. And this is one of those writing pieces that they're learning that are supported in the standards, where they state their own opinion about which game is most effective in keeping their interest and teaching them something important. And they'll be making a recommendation in this writing piece that game be added to the software on the school's computers. And in doing so, they're citing the evidence and rationale based on the writing that they're learning in class.
So moving up to the middle school level, you can really see how these foundational skills build. And in the 7th grade, students might compare and contrast a fictional portrayal of time, place, or character and a historical account of the same time period as a means of understanding how authors of fiction use or alter history.
And so you might see an example, just some great works of literature and informational texts in the classroom. So in this example, maybe the students in grade 7 are reading Mark Twain's Adventures of Tom Sawyer. They're not only reading that piece of literature, but they're also reading primary sources from the 19th century. And then we talked earlier about the multiple texts. So in reading these different pieces together, they begin to draw conclusions about how Mark Twain used observation and imagination in creating a portrait of this coming-of-age story of a young boy in a small town in America before the Civil War.
This is probably one of the biggest shifts, I think, with the new curriculum, and the students have really started to embrace it, and that's the multiple text piece. Whereas before, we maybe would expect them to look at and synthesize one piece. Now students are maybe looking at a fictional piece, a nonfiction piece, maybe even a video or something else, and synthesizing all of them, comparing and contrasting them, and really just trying to figure out how they all fit together.
And if you think about that career and college ready piece, these are the kinds of things that we need to be able to do in the workplace.
So moving up to the high school level, in grades 9 to 10, students might translate quantitative or technical information, maybe it's a chart or a table, and then they'd be expected to translate the information and express it either visually or mathematically, and put that into words.
So an example here, this is a great example of the kind of authentic learning experiences we try to provide our students in school, where in this example, students in a technology and engineering class, they're going through the design process in developing a smartphone app. So the students within this authentic experience will learn to, make a chart to compare the costs and benefits of the product. They will translate the information into an argument, support by quantitative evidence in order to gain funding and so forth, and be able to do those presentation skills that they'll need to be able to do, again, in college and in career.
And finally, the 11th grade and college career ready stage, the students would possibly evaluate a speaker's point of view, reasoning, use of evidence, and rhetoric.
In this example, they have the students studying drama and plays such as classic works of literature like Shakespeare's The Tempest or Sophocles' Antigone. So the students would get together in pairs, choose a significant section of dialogue, and then perform that for the class. And then they'll go through the process of being able to analyze and discuss what those lines reveal about the characters and why that dialogue that they chose is important to the meaning of the play. So I hope these examples of how the standards play out in the class give you a little bit of a snapshot of what it might look like through the grade levels.
So again, each of those lead bullet points, so that's the standard.
That's the standard, right.
That's the description of the standard at each grade level.
And that's that idea of, so you've got these anchor overarching standards, but at different grade levels it looks differently. And these are just sort of pulled from reading and writing and some of the different things the Common Core ELA standards ask the students to be able to do.
And again, that would vary by classroom, sometimes a little bit.
What some of those examples?
Choice of the
Yeah.
books.
Yeah, exactly.
For the most part, we do have common text throughout, so students are exposed to common text from grades K through 12, but there are other texts that teachers may want to choose. Like I love Sophocles, so we always cover Antigone in my class. Someone else might cover that era differently. Maybe a different piece from Sophocles.
Well, one thing we really have started to do in the Wakefield Public Schools, which I'm really excited about, is that we do have at least one common experience across the grade level at every grade level. So here at the Galvin Middle School, I've been in different English language arts classes, and all grade 6 teams are working on the same piece of literature. Some of the ones that they're doing,
so for instance,
Lightning Thief, is that grade
the Lightning
6?
Thief is in grade 6, so that's a longer text. You're nodding your head, you're familiar
My
with it?
son's doing it.
Yeah.
Or did it.
Okay, so they cover the Lightning Thief, and then they also have some shorter pieces that they cover, and everyone in that grade gets the same experience.
Right.
The writing assignments, the rigor is the same across the board.
So what's nice about that balance of the autonomy of individual teachers doing certain pieces in their class and grade levels is you have this opportunity with your grade level team to see what all 6th graders are doing and to be able to look, across and be able to kind of compare and work together on instruction. And then there's some autonomy as well for teachers to be able to choose their own texts as well.
It's also a great opportunity for teachers to sit down, and now they have, they're comparing apples to apples, and they're saying, where are we in the curriculum? Where are the areas that we need to, maybe boost a little bit, so the students are struggling in one area this year, maybe the next year they're not. So this is a way for them to really sit down, develop the curriculum together.
Because that was my question. So the teachers get together and they can sort of talk amongst themselves about if they're teaching all the same book, whatever it may be, they get a chance to compare across the grade level how it's going within the classroom.
They do, and that's actually built in now to the teachers' schedules. That and actually Paul supports those teams, grades 5 through 12. That's part of his role. He's a coach, so he actually sits down as a coach with, say, the grade 8 teachers, and they 3 times a 6-day cycle. They have a 45-minute period where that is what they're doing during the school day. Is they're sitting down, they're talking about instruction, they're looking at their students' work, having discussions, responding to where are their deficits, where are the kids' weaknesses, what do we need to do to address those weaknesses.
Yeah, we might take a writing assignment from the Lightning Thief, sit down, take a look at the student responses, and then we get to, as a team of teachers now, adjust the instruction accordingly.
And ultimately, why are the Common Core state standards important? And I hope by some of the examples you've just seen is they set very clear expectations and for every grade level, and those expectations are ultimately aligned to where we want students to be at the end.
So we have, on the next slide, we wanted to tell you a little bit about how students are taught in the classroom, and we have a video for you. This is not a video of one of our classrooms, but we thought that this really exemplified what you would see if you were to visit a classroom. This is a 5th grade reading, guided reading session.
Well, for me, guided reading is probably one of the most important times of the day. I'm going to start reading first, and then I'm going to call on some of you. It was the beginning of autumn when Sadako. Guided reading is meeting with the teacher to get explicit instruction to help them grow in their reading levels. So teaching strategies and skills that those students explicitly need.
He knew I hard work. He knew how hard I worked on the homework.
Good job. I like how April, she swapped the words right there, but then when she kept on reading, it didn't make sense, and so she went back and she made it make sense. Good readers do that. Thank you, scholars. I love it because I'm pulling groups of scholars, and they're grouped according to reading level, and so that way I can directly meet their needs. And then the rest of the students are doing readers workshop and independently practicing various skills.
Reading. He helped me out. Which word? That word. Recognize.
And so it just feels for me like a really nice time to meet all the needs of my students. Guided reading. Generally, that starts with a reading mini lesson, and that could be on a reading strategy or skill, and it also could be on teaching a workstation. So for today, it was teaching, the fluency workstation. Why is fluency important? Why is it important to have a fluency workstation if we want to be good readers?
If you don't have fluency, you will read like a robot.
So you'll read So I think there's a lot of buy-in when I'm introducing reading workstations and why is the work that we're doing so important? What Juliana is going to help me do is I can be the reader, and Juliana, I model it with another student so it's super clear about what should it look like when I'm at this workstation, and then we practice that. Start, and go ahead and press start, okay? Every day in places around the world. And then once I see that scholars are taking responsibility and know how to use that workstation, we keep on adding more and more. And then throughout the year, they're constantly shifting and changing according to the needs of the students. Okay, scholars, when I say go, you're going to take out your blue classwork folders. Okay? Go. So after the mini lesson, they all transition to their seats to immediately begin independently practicing skills that I've just taught. And then once I see that the class is in that mode, then I know, okay, I'm ready to pull the first guided reading group. So your assignment was to read chapter 2, and I asked you guys some questions about it. And specifically, we've been working on main problem, right? Identifying problems that we see in a story. So during guided reading, kind of two things are happening. One is I'm pulling groups of scholars to directly meet their needs. And then the rest of the students are rotating in readers' workstations and working independently while the teacher is meeting with those guided reading groups. The hardest part, I think it's really being able to manage 31 students who are working independently without me. And so all of those procedures and systems were explicitly taught and practiced. She showed the back of the paper to me. It's definitely challenging, but I love it. I try and remind my students every single day there is a really important reason of why we're here. And they know, they're like, yeah, it's to be somebody. And I think they get it.
I think why that video is important is one of the things we hear about the Common Core standards is they are quite rigorous. And so sometimes, parents might feel a little bit nervous about, is my child going to get what my child needs? So differentiation really comes with that. It's really important that we have practices in our classrooms that we're able to address students at all, even though we're all reaching for the same level of complexity, that we have strategies in place to make sure we're differentiating every single day to make sure every child gets what they need. So that example of that guided reading classroom is one of the things that we're doing in our schools as well.
So did we want to go ahead advance?
So we actually thought we might skip ahead to PARCC a little bit. We have an activity which we can still do. The activity will be fun. We thought we'd give you a grade 4 assessment, so you could actually try yourselves and practice. And so we'll do that. It'll give you a sample of the kind of reading that we'll do. But before we do that, just to make sure we have time in case people have questions about the PARCC, the idea of doing the activity was to give you a sample PARCC assessment to talk about how do we assess instruction. How do we know that the students are meeting the standards? How are they, how do we assess whether or not they're getting there? And then we were going to share with you, and we'll still share with you, an example of what a PARCC sample questions look like. The PARCC you've heard about is a new nationally developed standardized test. It's aligned to the Common Core. PARCC stands for Partnership of Assessment of Readiness for College and Career. And right now we're test driving it in Massachusetts for these for the next couple of years. At some point when the decision is made, it may fully replace MCAS for all students by 2018 or 19.
So what is different and what is new about PARCC? Well, the tests are computer-based. They use interactive questions to determine whether students have mastered the fundamental skills that we've been talking about. They activate higher order thinking skills. They assess writing at every grade level, and they reflect what students must know each year as they build toward the knowledge and skills needed to be college and career ready. When we talk about interactive questions, I think it's really nice to see. We were talking about assessing multiple texts and possibly video. So the PARCC assessment has built in multiple texts that students can look through, they can annotate, and then they might have a video clip to watch too, and that might be part of their assessment. Kim has just passed out 2 handouts. One is 10 things parents should know about PARCC, and frequently asked questions about Common Core and PARCC.
So maybe just a couple of things I'll just point out, and you can maybe ask any questions you have about it. But Massachusetts has always been one of the nation's top performing states. But I think, in Massachusetts as educators, we've just talked about, but we can't still stand still and not continue to improve and especially embrace like technological innovations and really continue to move forward. So Massachusetts has been collaborating with other states to really find a really high quality assessment. And PARCC is the one that they've landed on at this point. We're just trying it out. I would say at this point, our experiences, from what we can see, is that I think it's a more rigorous assessment, but our students, they just started this week with the first of the tests, and so far the students are reporting they're fine and they feel pretty confident. At least that's what we got back in first week. Did you?
He actually said it was easy, which.
Which always scares us, right?
Yeah.
No, but they're all saying that. I think, and what that tells me is that the students are feeling prepared. And I think we've been working very hard to prepare them. After that module they just did on the lightning thief, it's hard to imagine they wouldn't be prepared to do their best.
Yeah.
So,
My daughter didn't get any sleep last Sunday night because she
Oh.
was telling me about PARCC.
no, I thought you said she was
No.
second grade.
She's in third
Third.
grade.
Oh, third grade, because I was going to say, it's the third graders
She
took
was
it.
stressing out about
Yeah.
it. And I
Okay,
was trying to calm her down about, it's
Yeah.
not that bad, this is like this is like the practice round.
it's practice, right?
Yeah.
And we're really held harmless at this point, we're just trying it out.
Right.
And part of it is it's the first time we're doing a computer-based test. So the students are manipulating things on the computer, and that's a piece of it too.
And I think that's the norm, because when my kids took MCAS, they were stressed out about that, so.
Yeah.
Especially I think it's the first time, it's just a normal
Yeah,
reaction, I
yeah.
think, for kids.
And I think
Because
that's
they
really
want
what
to
it
do
is.
well,
Yeah.
so, any kind of standardized testing, that's going to be the norm, I
Yeah.
think, so.
I could empathize with her. I used to stress out about tests. They tell me a test.
I
is
still
not
do, I'm
really
stressing out about
being
this
a-
fourth grade one that they're going
We
to throw
don't-
at us.
We don't want anyone
Yeah.
to stress out about tests,
It's
but
fun.
I think because it's so new and there's a lot of talk about it, and it's computerized, that's probably why students are feeling a little bit of anxiety. Hopefully,
It's a new thing.
if we go with PARCC, if the state decides to go with PARCC, I think some of that will go away. Of course, a little anxiety before a test is probably natural.
Right.
The other thing that I like about the assessment, or the way that PARCC has treated the assessment, is that they've been very responsive. They've looked at teacher feedback, they've looked at student feedback on the evaluation, and they said they are going to work hard to make sure that it is appropriate for every grade level. So we did a really good job of preparing the students, which is probably why they felt, wow, this was a lot easier than we thought. Part of it also might be the fact that PARCC listened to some of the trials and everything and adapted accordingly.
I agree, and I think the thing that with any assessment, whether it's MCAS or PARCC or whatever it is that we utilize, it has, the reason we do it, we can't lose the meaning of it in all of this. The reason we assess students is to learn more about their learning and respond to it. It's how we use the information that comes and the data that comes from the assessments that's important. And we can learn a lot when we see how, and study in those teacher teams and study how our children did, then we can adjust instruction accordingly and support any deficits or areas of weakness. That's really the meaning behind any assessment. So do you want to give one a try?
So before we do that, I just want to put up on the screen, in case you have any other questions, please feel free to contact the school, either the individual school or the central school office, or you can also contact me. But if you'd like to go to the Department of Education website, it's actually Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. They retained their old web address. There are many, many resources on there for parents to learn more about Common Core and PARCC and what we're doing in the state. So we'll go now to the assessment
You might just
piece.
enjoy seeing, so this is grade 4.
Did we already do this?
I did this with the school committee, so you've
Yeah.
seen the piece of
I
literature.
passed, so if
If you need to do it,
if I can do it, guys, you can.
This is actually a beautiful piece of literature called Kira Kira. And this would be an example of, and actually we'll hand out the second one too, Paul.
Okay.
And this is an example of when the students would be, they would receive 2 pieces. So this is a short piece of literature, a short text. And the second one is a short fable that they would also get. Okay, and then I'm handing out your assessment, and there are 6 questions. I'm going to have you try to answer the first, read Kira Kira and see if you can answer the first 5. If you want to do it as a full group, we can always do it as a group. And then the 6th one shows you the essay question that the students would be asked. And our thought was too, as you look at the, as you answer the questions, also take a look at your 10 anchor standards. And you could jot down next to the question, what standards, what of the Common Core standards do you think that this question is kind of getting at, to see if students are meeting that standard? Okay, so take a minute to read Kira Kira. It's beautiful. I think you'll enjoy it. So we're down to about the last 4 minutes. Has everyone had a chance to read? Do you want to just kind of zip through the answers? I don't want to put anybody on the spot. So, did anyone have a chance to start the questions, or you just finished reading?
Started them.
Just okay. So, Just to give you, so this might be a sample of what a PARCC assessment might look like, some sample questions. So the first question is, what is the meaning of the word constantly as the narrator uses it in paragraph 4 of Kira Kira? Any thoughts?
Be brave.
All the time.
All the time, yeah. Letter B is the correct answer. And what standard and those anchor standards does that seem to connect to? Why do you think, what is that assessing of the anchor standards? It'll kind of maybe lead you to, I think all of them really reflect number 1 and 10, but perhaps in this case, number 4, just really interpreting words as they are used in a text. It's kind of a text-specific, really understanding of what a word means in the context of the piece. So I would say this first question is really about that standard 4, wouldn't you say, Mr.
Yes.
Russo? Okay. And then on number 2, they ask you which detail from the story uses a word or phrase that also means constantly. Anyone have any thoughts about A through D? Which one also means constantly?
I went with A.
A is the right answer. Yes, A. So Lynn told me that when I was a baby, she used to take me onto our empty road at night where we would lie on our backs and look at the stars while she said over and over, Katie, say Kira, 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 Kira. So that is all a kind of a detail from the story. Again, looking at that standards, it's really an example of that standard 4. We're really understanding words and phrases as they're used in a text, in their meaning and how they shape meaning or tone. How about number 3? How are the events in paragraphs 1 and 2 important to the theme of the story? Those first couple of paragraphs about the many lessons Lynn taught her younger sister. Do they explain that Katie's family had high expectations of her? Do they show how strong the relationship is between Katie and Lynn? Or do they introduce the idea that Katie and Lynn want to learn more about the Japanese language? Thoughts?
Establish a relationship.
Yes, C. Yep, C is it. They show how strong the relationship is between Katie and Lynn. And if you think about what anchor standard that might hit, I would say probably in this case, probably about 2 and 3, maybe standard 2 and standard 3. Just kind of really getting the central idea or themes of a text, kind of and their ability to analyze it, and then understanding like how individuals develop and interact over the course of a text.
Is it going to be answer D too?
And D about the, I'm sorry, on 3, the answer D, they introduce the Japanese language.
Yeah.
That's not the answer that PARCC gives,
Yeah.
but I think you'll find that some of them are tough to decide between, because they do have, each one often has some merit. What were you going to say, Paul?
So I was just going to say maybe we can, because it's time is...
Wrap up, yep.
I did place a survey on everyone's table,
Okay.
and you want to just make sure to fill that out and turn it in for door prizes and raffles at the end. But thank you everyone for coming and participating.
Thank you.
If you want to try out the rest of the questions and submit them to us, we'd be happy to go over them for you.
Those are for you to take home.
Thank you.
Good. All right. And where do they put where do they put those? Downstairs?
I believe there's something downstairs for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming. Any other questions on Common Core PARCC before you go?
Are they going to have any other follow-up meetings, like towards the end of the school year?
Please excuse the interruption. We have reached the end of our first session at this point. We trust that you have had a great experience and that momentum will carry over into our next session, which will be starting at 10:50. So hopefully everyone is wrapping up. During the break, feel free to use the restroom, make calls home. But again, the first session will be ending in a few minutes.
So when you said follow up, in what way?
Well, either follow up with, the classroom teachers individually, or will there be another, sit-down session at the Galvin or the other schools to talk about how the school's experience went with the park the first go around?
Yeah, right now, Dr. Zweig's been talking about having some kind of a parent meeting in the spring at different school levels to kind of talk about curriculum and how things have played out. When are we getting our park scores back?
So the nice thing about PARCC scores, they are, the first time around, they're going to take a little bit longer. They're evaluating. But in the future, they said that they'd be back a lot sooner than MCAS we used to get after. Almost
6 months later.
6 months later. So they said that there's going to be a quick turnaround. Not on the district level, but at the state level, if you do go to the DOE website, they are posting, there are going to be some statewide information sessions and things. So they are posting a lot of stuff up there. For the district level, I would say, check the website and be on the lookout for Dr. Strikes.
And I'd look at for some of the spring parent meetings at your schools to hear more about how things went.
So when will that happen, approximately? That will be May?
I think April, maybe April or May.
April, May.
Yeah.
And they, so it took, I noticed it took like the following year to get the MCAS
Right.
results back. So will those come out over the summer or before that?
The results from PARCC, they haven't given a deadline, a return for the trials yet. But they said after the,
Once
we
it
get,
gets,
once it gets rolling, it's
supposed
going to be
very quick turnaround.
very quick, within like a month or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. It's one of the things that with the computer base, they can turn around much
Right.
more quickly.
So before the end of the school year?
Yeah.
a month.
Yes,
Yeah.
most definitely.
Okay.
Which
We're-
gives the
we're not
teacher
sure
more
the level,
opportunity
yeah.
to really, again, take that information and use it, hopefully.
And we're not sure the level of detail we'll get in this first
No.
time around yet, so, but that's all coming.
Okay.
So, well, thank you very much for
Thank
coming.
you.